what did you share to enable them to make this powerful choice and to get it right?
And I shared with them by mistake, but I really believe that it was God's input.
I'm sitting out today and very honored to be with Margot Miller and Madeleine de Kok. And it's mother and daughter, and they are going to share their inspirational testimony about purity and purity in the marriage. Welcome. Firstly, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to speak about this. Purity in the marriage. I'm going to start with you, Margot. I think it's something that is absolutely not even addressed often, definitely not in the world, because in the world, the television programs, the magazines, I mean, nobody advocates purity and waiting for your marriage partner in such a pure way that you waited, and we're going to get into that now. But even in the Christian world and in the churches, I don't think it's something that's spoken about enough. And I would love to talk about this and to inspire people that there is this option of purity and the results and the fruit of that seed, of sowing a seed of purity in the marriage. So please tell me, how did you decide, and at what age did you decide that you wanted to wait for your husband in terms of sex? I think you mentioned, you're going to correct me now, even kissing and all kinds of intimate, marital or even in a relationship. You waited until your marriage day, your wedding day, for everything. Tell me about it, and tell me, when did you decide when did you make this decision?
Yeah, Lorna, I think it for me started from an early age, and even high school. I remember really having the struggle in my matric year even, and just, always wanting to have relationships from an early age. My parents met in school. So for me, it was something that I really desired, to also meet my husband in school when I'm still young. And and I was matric, and I just remember it just didn't ever happen. And I remember asking God, when is it going to happen for me? Am I ever going to get married? Yes. Friends were dating in school, and it just didn't ever happen for me. And so I think, God, in that I look back and think, God really protected me, because I think the guys I was interested in school, completely changed in the course of, even when I went to varsity, how I, now thought about a future partner. And, when I
think that, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there, because that is such a powerful topic. The guys who look cool in school at the time, now, when you look back, I mean, that is something that needs to be said and heard by the teenagers, because it's true. If I think back of my school days, the guys who I thought was cool, when I went to the reunion, you think, I don't know how
you get the shock of your life. Definitely. And I think when I went to varsity, I was involved in church there, and I just realized that, it's definitely the most important choice besides choosing God and, getting saved. But the second most important choice in life is your life partner. So I realized that, it's now not anymore that important to me how popular someone is, but does he have a relationship with God? And in varsity, that's something I explored more, and I really read a few books. And I remember one book that I read, Joshua Harris mentioned, where he was actually challenged by not kissing at all until marriage. To pursue purity 100%.
Sure.
And Yeah, I remember just that thought, and just at that stage, I didn't kiss any guy ever, so I just thought, you know what, maybe this is something I should pursue.
Sure.
His reasons, of course, were that, you know, it's so much more difficult to really pursue purity the way God wants it once you get physically involved with someone.
Because in the olden days, and I know we're not living in the olden days, and it is the year 2019, but I mean, in the biblical times, they didn't even see their wives until the night
there wasn't
of
even a courtship
of their intercourse. Really, I mean, that's how. Who was tricked like that? He got the sister Rachel, and not the woman.
Jacob,
exactly.
Yeah.
So we think in 2019 that this is strange.
Yes.
But in the biblical times and in the godly sense of it, you know, they prayed for a wife.
Yes.
And they trusted God for this wife.
Yes, yes.
And they didn't even see the woman.
No. And that's the thing, I think, you know, especially in our culture, it's totally a culture shock to people. And I remember, God, I know that, and that's why I say, I don't say everyone should not kiss until they get married. It's so a personal conviction you need to have. You can't do it out of a law or try and do it because it's a rule for you, because it won't last in a relationship. It must be something that God convicts you of. And out of my relationship with God, this is something God really convicted me of. But my parents even sharing with me, you know, that they didn't stay pure. They didn't have the input we had. No one talked to them. So in that, I knew that God just told me, Margot, you can't think that you're going to be strong and different. Even though you didn't have relationships to that point, you are not strong, and therefore you cannot play with the enemy. I know my gran would always give this explanation and say that, you know, God is very in control of the enemy. You know, he overcame Satan at the cross, but it's like a dog that's on a leash. And the moment we, you know, God has control over that dog, but the moment we go into Satan's territory, that dog can bite you. And it's not that God doesn't have control, but he has, but you are in his territory.
Into his territory.
Yes, and I know that. And it was really something supernatural that God just imparted in my heart, saying that, Margot, if you are going to start kissing in a relationship, that is you entering into that territory of the enemy.
Zone.
Yes.
Because kissing becomes more intimate. And then, I mean, your body obviously physically reacts to it.
Yes.
And kissing
and
is
then
foreplay.
How do you stop it then?
Because kissing is foreplay, you know.
So just to clarify now, because I know a lot of people that are watching, this is a total culture shock for them. They're like, what? You have never touched or kissed a guy before your wedding day? Is this even possible? And I want to ask you, Madeleine, because you are such a big part of your daughter's lives, and you spoke to them very openly. You shared intimate details about your marriage and things that you struggle with in order to help them to make different decisions, to get a different fruit in their marriage. How hard was it, and at what age did you really start to talk about your marriage, and what did you share to enable them to make this powerful choice and to get it right, I want to say, right? Because you can decide on something. I mean, how often do we actually even get it right? It's a hard thing to do.
Follow through.
It was actually amazing how it started. Is when they were in, they twins, and in grade 7, we went on a ladies' weekend with friends of ours. Only the girls went on a ladies' weekend, and I shared with them by mistake, but I really believe that it was God's input. How my husband and I went on honeymoon before our marriage. And they immediately said, Mom, how is it possible? And then I realized I spilled the whole can of worms now. And we'll have to open that can of worms now. And then I just realized that I have to share it with them. So I did, and I'm so glad that I stepped forward and shared it. Because we could start talking about this whole thing in grade 7, such a crucial age, about being pure and the influence it had in my life. And I was so amazed that when we sat down later on in that week and talked about it, they said to me, okay, Mom, but I understand a lot of stuff now that's happening in you and Dad's marriage. Because we did fight a lot. And we maybe didn't have so much respect for each other.
Sure. And respect. I think that is one of the biggest things that can come out of purity and waiting in a marriage.
Definitely. There are just stuff that happens afterwards that's not the same. But I didn't have the proof at that stage. You know, it was only things that I experienced in our wedding, in our marriage.
And can I ask you an intimate question? At what age did you meet your husband?
I met my husband at the age of 15.
Okay.
So I went to school at the age of 5. So I was in grade 11 already.
Okay.
15 in grade 11.
Wow.
And
when did you start having sex then in your relationship?
Only when we were at university. And also because of peer pressure.
Sure.
Because my husband and I really had that desire to wait.
Yes, we all have that desire.
We know what
it's
is
in
God's,
us, right? We are born with it, but then the world comes.
And not only the world, in the church itself. Because I realized over the years that the misleading factor at that stage was at university on my first year camp. We went to a church camp for first years. And we asked the minister openly, okay, so when is it a sin to have sex before marriage and you know you're going to marry?
Sure.
And he didn't give a straight answer about it, and I realized that was my first flaw.
Sure.
That came, or the first lie that came in about, but we are going to get married, so what's wrong? You know, if we have
that's
sex,
your
then.
intent, and I think that's something that Margot talked about just now, is when you date somebody, you're just dating. What is your intent? Why are you dating this person? Are you dating?
Definitely.
Why? Is it a friendship, or are you dating to get married? Is it your life partner? And so not a lot of relationships really, I think, get more intimate just for nothing. You do intend, your intentions is to marry that person.
And it's natural.
You do think so. Oh,
intention
this is the guy I'm going to marry, right?
Yeah, it is a natural thing, and that is the first thing that I really focused on with them, is to say, I know that you have this desire to meet a guy in school already, and to have this relationship that Dad and I have, but there was a lot of heart sore and heartbreaking things and heartache that happened
because
in
the movies, we see the movies, and they have the sweet 16 birthdays, and what do you do on your sweet 16? You kiss a guy, and that's the norm, right? In the church, in the world, it's what everybody sees. So that's very difficult to go against that norm and say, all right, my intention is I want to be pure before God. God, how do I do that? I want to choose a marriage partner and be pure until the day of my marriage.
Yes. And I realized that to sit and talk, and I really just want to encourage parents and to say that, do you realize that you are the one, your children must be so comfortable to speak about sexuality and relationships, and it starts young already, where you, just to talk to your young child and to say, listen, nobody's supposed to touch your body, only when you marry, even if they're at the age of 5, at the age of 6, only when you marry, your husband will, just for them to know that marriage is such a normal stuff, and it will only happen there. Since young, I just feel that the younger, the better, to talk about it. And I realized then to share with them that Dad and I didn't do it, but it was we wanted so badly to stay pure. Sorry, but we couldn't, because we were in a relationship for 10 years before we got married.
That's long.
That's quite a long time.
Very long, no.
For 10 years.
And yeah, it was so difficult for us, because already, and as well, the other factor that I really shared with them is that your group of friends that you have around you, what do they believe? What do they think about? All my friends were having sex. So they actually at one stage said, okay, there's definitely something wrong with you. Why are you not having sex? And I just said, but I feel that, before God we don't want. And We don't want to do it. We really want to wait until marriage. But later on, because of all the being a freak, you know, always standing out like a sore eye, everybody judging you, and not that it is an excuse, because
but
it's
that's
you.
very real, though.
It's a
very
real thing,
real
but, you know,
to feel judged and to be criticized for your faith. That's not easy.
It's not easy.
We read that in the Bible, and sometimes we read testimonies of people being criticized and even tortured for their faith. And this is almost an emotional torture for your faith, by your friends, and by the world, and even by the church.
By the church as
Because
well.
a lot of ministers, like you say, don't answer the question properly. Because one, they might not know that there is an option of purity, that there are actually people out there that has been able to stay completely pure until the day of their wedding.
Even
as well as maybe the minister didn't get it right. You know, he feels bad. And like, how do you answer somebody if you can't even do it? So it's to get that realness and say, look, I haven't been able to do it, but can I tell you, this is something that is possible. And the fruit of this purity. I want to talk about the fruit of the purity.
Yes, Lorna, I must say that there's quite a difference. I saw it in my friends, the ones that waited, you know, and was pure when they got married, that they really had empathy with each other, much more than what I and my husband had. A lot of endurance. I would say they would walk the extra mile with each other. Robert and I really was short-tempered, and I always felt that it was because of that. If I look at my friends, the other thing is respect. I just feel that the respect goes. You know that I never realized how much we stole from each other. You know, and you only see that, and especially now with my daughters, both my daughters being married. I realized it was definitely we stole from each other, especially from a man, because I feel that you actually steal that priesthood from him, and you take over, because you know in Genesis, where with the curse after when they went out of Eden, the Bible said that Eve will crave after her husband, or what's that word, long after her husband, and that long, if you go and look in Hebrew, it means that you will always want to rule him. And I feel that that happened. You know, you immediately has taken his priesthood away, and you rule now. You are. And that was the main thing I realized. And then the other thing that I realized with my daughters, after they had their first sexual encounter, they had no shame. And I still had a lot of shame in marriage, long, I would say 6-7 years, you know, in marriage, I still had shame. And I feel that's the difference.
I think it's because shame, when you start having sex outside of marriage, like you mentioned in the beginning, shame comes in almost immediately.
Yes.
Because it's nice, right? Sin is nice. It always feels nice.
Yes.
Sin is not nice, otherwise nobody would sin. If
of course, of course. Yes.
But sin feels nice for that moment, and then the shame comes in. That is so powerful. Margot, I'm going to come back to you. I want to ask you about your first experience. So now you've courted each other for so long, and you've waited. You were so faithful in your decision, which is so honourable. It's absolutely amazing. I want to honour you for that. And I know it's through God's grace and lots of prayer from your mom and your dad and people around you in the community and the support, because it's not easy. But now you got married. So tell us about your first experience.
I've maybe first want to just mention, it was actually so funny, on our wedding day, the evening, I think it was about late the evening, then and I think about 7 people came to me and just said, listen, they were very worried and they just want to pray for me because they are very concerned. You know, a lady actually came and said, listen, just use the honeymoon to just kiss.
Oh my goodness.
Don't go all the way, like it's going to be traumatic for you. And
So spiritual Christians were actually scared for your sake,
yes,
right?
no, and it was friends that I think, and I know they really had good intentions. I just think they didn't. Yeah, they were just they were just very nervous for me, and but I was actually it was so amazing for me how there was just such a grace I could feel that God had for me. I was not at all nervous, and I remember when my husband and I spoke about it before. You know, we kind of just talked, and I just said it's actually it's so funny for us to talk about it because we don't know what's going to happen. And I actually noticed how when God says that He gives you the grace you need, and I think that moment when we got married, when they announced we are husband and wife, there was a new, we stepped into a new office. My husband and I both stepped into a new office, and there came all the grace we needed for our wedding night. And I remember I was walking to our honeymoon suites, and it was just so amazing to me how I wasn't nervous, I wasn't scared for anything. It was the most natural thing ever. I think the biggest thing for me that I can really also say is just what my mom also mentioned, was that there's no shame.
Sure.
There was no guilt, there was no shame. I didn't have any past memories. And I know a lot of people like, but you guys didn't practice or nothing, but there was no need. Like, it's a journey that we are going to go on, and God's going to bond us in that journey. It's not going to be perfect, but luckily we don't know what is perfect. You know, what is normal. You know, we don't even know any of that. And for me, God really blessed me so much, because even from my first wedding night, I immediately reached the climax. I didn't have any problem from the first time. It wasn't painful for me. It obviously was uncomfortable, and for me even I didn't expect it at all. You know, I just know that it's something that doesn't come easy, especially for women. And I must say with that even with our wedding night and even our whole honeymoon, there was never ever a time I didn't reach climax. It was for me there easily. It wasn't something difficult for me. But I know that, husband and I would talk a lot about it, and we have a lot of friends that are married. And I realized that one thing that I think sometimes can be stolen from your intimacy when you don't wait or when you compromise is a lot with your husband in the in the foreplay. Like, your husband would do everything for you. Francois had so much patience with me. He didn't rush into it. He was self-controlled. He had patience, and that I really could see was different from friends of mine whose husbands weren't like that. They rushed into it. And I think that also, obviously, for a woman, creates a whole different atmosphere in how you experience intimacy. So I really feel that that is something that came with the covenant and with purity, and just with him really giving up his life for me. Like, and even being like, you know what, I don't even care if I don't reach climax. For me, it's most important for me that you do. Yeah. You know, that he doesn't even care
laying
about
down
himself.
your own needs.
Yes.
I think already in the courting.
That he doesn't, and that was for me amazing. And even through our marriage for a long time, it was easy for me. It wasn't something that came difficult. But when I was pregnant and when I had Ada, they definitely changed a lot of things. And I know that immediately the enemy wanted to come and tell us we need to compromise. We need to do something different now. But I'm so grateful to God for my husband, because he is such a man of God, and he really realized that we cannot, if we start compromising now, you know, where is it going to end? And I know that God took us back to our honeymoon, and he just again reminded us that this is where I want you to work towards. This is not something, this I want always for you. And this is something you can always have. But now you have to ask yourself, why isn't it there? And I realized with me, a lot that changed with pregnancy and all the things, you know, women go through is definitely control came in my life. And I wanted to control things. And control steals intimacy.
were times that we really thought he was dead, because he would be screaming and you would hear all this torture, and then they would shoot.
I said to Lorna, you couldn't feel Jesus. It felt like he left you. You're sort of on your own.